Professor Darren Gerdes does a great job bringing updates on Ukraine and providing context about the conflict. He does several updates a day, and they're usually quite good and very informative. In this video, he talks about the importance of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is a former part of the Soviet Union, a former Soviet republic, has a border with Georgia and with the southwestern rather, portion of Russia. And the importance here is that Azerbaijan is becoming more pro-Ukrainian and wants to become progressively more and more independent of Russian rule. And Professor Gerdes explains in more detail why that's important. So listen in, enjoy, and get smarter.
A post-Soviet country is breaking free from Russia's orbit, and they're encouraging Ukraine not to go down the path that they went down. Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context in the war in Ukraine. We're going to start here and look at what's going on with Azerbaijan warning Ukrainians never to accept occupation. All right, this is the president of Azerbaijan, Aliyev. He's saying never accept occupation. That's what we did. Don't give up. That's his message to the Ukrainians. Let's look at this. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to answer a question from a Ukrainian representative at one of the events, and the question was roughly the same. My answer now won't differ from what I said then. And I think it resonates with the hope of the Ukrainian people. Never agree to occupation. That's the main advice. That's what we did. And that's what he's warning Ukrainians not to do. Okay, now Azerbaijan's a really interesting case because it's a very small country, part of the former Soviet Union, that is really at odds with Putin in many ways right now. Let me give you some of the background. Azerbaijan is taking Russia to international court over a passenger plane that was shot down in December, killing 38 people. President Aliyev says Russia has stonewalled the investigation for 7 months, with officials only responding that the investigation continues. The Azerbaijan Airlines flight was traveling from Baku to Grozny in Russia when it crashed near Kazakhstan after being hit by what investigators believe was Russian missile during the anti-drone operations. Well, how did it crash by Azerbaijan? The Chechens wouldn't let it land. It had to be diverted over to Kazakhstan. And that was after the Chechens were under drone attack and they, I think, mistakenly shot it down, or they were a little jittery and shot it down. Flight tracking data from Flight Radar 24 showed that the plane's GPS signal had been jammed near Grozny. Aliyev dismissed Russia's claims that Ukrainian drone was responsible. They made up some story right away, calling it a kindergarten story. Azerbaijan demands that Russia admits guilt, which they kind of got a almost sorry kind of apology at the time. Punishes those responsible, pays compensation to the victims' families, and reimburses Azerbaijan Airlines for its lost aircraft. But that's not the only thing that's going on right now with Azerbaijan. Tensions between Russia and Azerbaijan continue to escalate. The president made it clear to Putin that he considers Crimea and other Ukrainian territories currently held by Russian forces to be under occupation. That is, it's Ukrainian territory, not Russian territory. He advised Ukraine to continue fighting for the return of their territories and restoration of territorial integrity. He said never accept the occupation, and then a little bit more down here. These statements were made against the backdrop of a sharp conflict between Moscow and Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan, linked to the persecution of ethnic Azerbaijanis and Russian citizens of Azerbaijani origin, as well as Azerbaijan itself by Russian security forces. It's especially important to observe how the Kremlin will respond to these statements, and I'll show you some of the responses in a moment, by President of Azerbaijan, which clearly reflect a further deterioration of Azerbaijani Russian relations. I mean, it's bad. Like, I've never seen a post-Soviet state, other than, say, Ukraine, maybe Georgia, that it is going to be like this disaffected from Russia. Following the return of Karabakh to the Azerbaijani control, Azerbaijan has been expanding its influence both in the Caucasus and in the broader region that includes the former Soviet republics of Central Asia. Its main ally is Turkey, and that's one of the things. It's shifting into Turkey's orbit for protection against Russia. The Kremlin realizes that it's not just Azerbaijan trying to break free from Moscow's sphere of influence, it's Armenia as well, and that's bad news for the Russians. Today, all of Russia's resources are tied up in its war against Ukraine. The Russians quite literally lack the means to carry out aggressive actions against other former Soviet republics. Therefore, this is a perfect time and opportunity to move out from under Russian influence. One of the key points of contention is Azerbaijan's ambition to become a central hub for energy exports from Central Asia to the West, bypassing Russia. That's not something that Russia wants to have happen. They're like, remember, Russia's a gas station masquerading as a state. They need those resources. This is something Russia strongly opposes. Russian propagandists have already started making demands. Well, of course they have. Halt the export of agricultural products from Azerbaijan. Prepare for an immediate military conflict. Strike the center of Baku with an Orishnik missile. However, all of this is currently just informational noise. But let's look at this. So here's the pipeline. Here's Baku is the capital. It's going from the Caspian Sea across. Instead of having to go through Russia, it unlocks the whole Central Asia, right? And from this pipeline goes from Azerbaijan through Georgia into Turkey and makes Turkey a bigger player, cuts Russia out of it, and it makes Azerbaijan a big player with this. Okay, Russian state TV has already aired a new expose. What's going on with Azerbaijan? It turns out that Azerbaijani special services, using their diasporas in Russia, assisted Ukrainian intelligence in carrying out the sabotage T Operation Spiderweb, which aimed to strike Russia's strategic air force. Well, whether that's true or not, and I don't know that that's true, but whether it's true or not, striking back is not what they need, but they only know how to use force. They never, ever get to the place where they're just like, well, you know what? Let's see if we can patch this up diplomatically. Okay, that's precisely why Russia's security services are now carrying out operations to neutralize Azerbaijani diasporas, which function as an intelligence outpost of the Azerbaijani special services working in close coordination with the Ukrainian ones. It's not like the Azerbaijanis are any great threat, right? Like the Azerbaijanis are like a fraction of the size, something like, I want to say it was like 10 million people as opposed to Russia's 150 million-ish, something in that neighborhood. But it's a threat enough that they're creating this expose about it and Russian media. Okay, Armenia tells Kremlin to get lost after a request to extradite Russian dissenter. So the 25-year-old, former rifleman with Russia's missile forces, deserted his unit and fled to Armenia. When he found out that Russian security agents has come to retrieve him, he turned himself into Armenian police. But then there came the twist. Instead of handing him over to Moscow, Armenia let him go. Like, okay, so it's not just Azerbaijan, it's also in Armenia. Armenia let him go, despite the fact that he's wanted in Russia and faces charges for desertion. The Kremlin allegedly tried to smuggle him out illegally, bypassing legal procedures. Armenia shut down that plan. So between Azerbaijan and Armenia, that would be Armenia over here, they're losing influence at their very southern border, and they don't want that to happen. Okay, let's look at something else here with Azerbaijan. Lots of unhappiness in Russia as Azerbaijan President Aliyev accepts a gift of shoulder patches of Ukrainian army brigades from a Ukrainian journalist, and he tells her, continue on the same path. How about that?